The meeting of April 25th, 2018, Board of Appeals will now come to order. Roll call.
Mr. Bacilli. Present. Mr. D'Angelo. Present. Mr. Lopes. Present. Mr. Mazzoni. Present. Mr. Tucker is present.
Present.
And Mr. Pelton is here as the alternate.
If we could take up, we received the two letters, take up calendar item number A1811 and then A1844.
A1811 is the application of RBP Hotel LLC, 1359 Hooksett Road, Hooksett, New Hampshire, requesting minimum front yard setback, a variance to expand the number of permitted hotel rooms from 132 to 160 at 245 Revere Beach Parkway, Revere. We have a letter from Christine Thomas from RBT Hotels LLC, respectfully requesting a continuance of this matter before the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Is there a motion to continue? Roll call, please.
Question now comes on continuing this matter to the next meeting of the board, which is
The 23rd, would it be? The 23rd?
May 23rd at 4 p.m. Question comes on continuance. Mr. Bacilli? Yes. Mr. D'Angelo? Yes. Mr. Lopes? Yes. Mr. Mazzoni? Yes. Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Yes. This matter is continued to May 23rd at 4 p.m. The next matter before the board is A1814, the application of A. Chara Development LLC, 30B Railroad Ave, Revere, requesting various variances to enable the appellant to construct a 145-unit residential mixed-use building at 320 Revere Beach Boulevard, Revere. We have a letter to the board from their counsel. Please be advised, I'm writing on behalf of A. Chara Development LLC regarding its pending application to raise existing non-conforming structure in order to construct a new mixed-use building at 320, 327 Revere Beach Boulevard. At this time, the applicant seeks to withdraw its application without prejudice. Should there be a need for further information, please feel free to contact this office, Lawrence Simeone Jr., and it also includes a site plan review report.
Okay. Just press the microphone, please. Thank
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is Attorney Lawrence Simeone with law offices at 300 Broadway, Revere, Massachusetts. Before you, on behalf of Achara Development, the letter stated by the clerk. Asked to withdraw this matter without prejudice.
So there is a letter to withdraw without prejudice, so this would not be in front of the Board of Appeals. Is there a motion to it on the table? If you'd like, do you need to explain anything? Or?
Wanted to make sure that the members have a copy of the letter of opposition of Rosalie Vincent. She wanted to make sure that the board members had a copy of her letter of opposition. Question now comes on granting leave to withdraw without prejudice. Mr. Bacilli? Yes. Mr. D'Angelo? Yes. Mr. Lopes? Yes. Mr. Mazzoni? Yes. Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Yes. This is leave to withdraw without prejudice is granted.
And now we'll be back to calendar item number A1806.
This is the application of North Shore Condos LLC, 787 North Shore Road, Revere, requesting minimum front, side, rear parking buffer zone for parking lot and dumpster variances to enable the appellants to construct an 18-unit residential condominium at 1133 North Shore Road, bounded by Beachland Avenue and Calumet Street. Members have received a letter from the Director of Economic Development, Mr. O'Brien, and there were also accompanying a letter from Stephen Marabito, also on this project.
And then there was two letters of support, I believe, as well, or no?
Those were-
Emails? They were for something else? Okay. We have a copy of the letters. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, board members. My name's Corey Rhodes. I'm an attorney with D'Ambrosio Brown, LLP, 14 Proctor Avenue in Revere. Attorney Jerry D'Ambrosio is with me here tonight as well. We represent the applicants, Rob and John Nakashian, related to the property at 1133 North Shore Road. To give you a little summary from last time, this is an 18-unit condominium project seeking to redevelop what is really a disjointed and deteriorating corner on North Shore Road. As you see from the pictures I handed out, a pretty bad condition is what this property is faced with currently, and we are seeking to totally renovate that and make this a harmonious use with the neighborhood and just a better looking building in this city and clean up these properties. This is a rendering of the proposed structure. To highlight again, these are 18 condominiums. These are people buying homes, investing in the neighborhood. They're not rental units. They have 20 parking spots at this building, so that's one spot restricted to each unit, and then 2 visitor spots beyond that. And let's not forget, this is right down the street from Wonderland. We're marketing this building and expecting that every single person in this building is going to be a commuter who's going to be jumping on the T, utilizing that as their main source of transportation. To discuss some of the comments that came at the last hearing, there seemed to be some confusion exactly where this building was going to sit in comparison to its rear neighbors. The gentleman on Calumet Street thought it was going to be right on the property line. We are set back 15.4 feet from the property line. So the building is set back pretty significantly from where his property starts. In addition, he had some concerns about residents of this building parking on Calumet Street and parking on Beachland Street. As we offered previously, as we came up with, we are happy to have this building excluded from any resident street parking on those 2 side streets, meaning that anyone who's parked in this building, they can't go and just park on the side street. They have to have their car in this building or they don't have a car. That's how it works. And we are happy to have that. It will not be an issue having these people park on those streets. My client did have a chance to meet with the abutter to discuss some of the concerns in a little more detail. Unfortunately, the abutter was asking for a certain amount of money for his property to be purchased, which was approximately twice the fair market value for what his property is worth, and that's just something that my clients could not do. We think this is a great project for the city, really going to clean up this neighborhood. We're getting away from this commercial use that's on this corner. But for this building coming in, that's probably going to stay a commercial use. It would probably be a laundromat or a 7-Eleven, which are completely allowed as of right. We think putting this building here is a much more harmonious use with the neighborhood in these 2 side streets. We are on a highway, and this is a good-looking building and a good use to put here instead of, in and out traffic of a commercial use all day long. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have and ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any proponents?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Zoning Board of Appeal, my name is Robert O'Brien. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the City of Revere. I live at 10 Ocean Avenue in Revere. And I am here to speak in favor of ZBA approval of these variances. I would note, first of all, that the proponents in this case are a family who has a business in Revere, who live in Revere, are currently developing a valued project from the perspective of the city, which is veterans housing on the site of the former synagogue site on Shirley Avenue. They are heavily invested in Revere in many respects and have done very good work on behalf of the community. The quality of the proponent is not an issue before the Zoning Board of Appeal, but it's certainly of significance to the city. I would also note that the project now before you for approval has evolved quite considerably from the proposal that was originally made. There was a 5-story, 24-unit apartment complex that was proposed, and in working with the city, and particularly under the leadership of Ward Councilor John Powers, that has been modified in significant and very beneficial effects. It is no longer a rental property, it is now a condominium. It is no longer 5 stories, it is now 4 stories. And it has in many respects been improved as a result of that collaboration, and we think that that should be noted. The developers have been very responsive to the community, particularly responsive to Councilor Powers. I think the result before you now warrants the variances that have been required, without which it cannot actually be constructed. And I think what will come out of this is an affordable, accessible TOD development, which will provide ownership opportunities that are not otherwise available now in the community, and it will significantly improve a site that is not only now less than ideal in terms of development, but it's a very, very visible site, as I have noted to others, in terms of the perception of Revere, where it's going in its development. The governor passes that site twice every day. And many other people coming through Revere get an impression of what's going on in the community from what happens in sites like this. So from the perspective of the Economic Development Department, and I think I also speak for the mayor, we very much urge you to approve these. It was continued from your last agenda in order to allow time to consult with the developer. As has been noted, that did take place. It did not result in a successful outcome, but I think notwithstanding that, it should be approved, and we very much urge that action. Thank you.
Are there any other proponents? Hearing none. Oh, proponents.
Yes, sir.
Hi, could you please
Yes,
put the
Mr.
microphone
Chairman
down?
and Board. Deborah Habig-Schneck, 350 Revere Beach Boulevard, not in a butter, owner of 2 units at the St. George. I am actually would support this because today we have a developer who's going to put up condos, not rentals, with greater stability, no commercial use, providing visitor parking, at least 2 for 18 units, and a smaller building size in height and in the dimensions. I am very pleased that Mr. Powers was able to negotiate with the developer to reduce that, and I would hope that the board is considering, again, it's bringing in traffic, but less than a larger type building, and I hope the board will realize that other buildings that may be going up in Revere, which are very large in size and have commercial use, bring in a totally different group of people, especially if they're apartment rentals. This is very nice to see such a small size building being placed in a location that will improve Revere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon, zoning board members. My name is Bill Ranny. I'm with Century 21 North East, right across the street over here at 16 Pleasant Street. My father grew up in Beachmont, so I've got a lot of familiarity with the area, and I think this project is perfect, especially with the affordability and the price range that these units are going to go for. We're not seeing this type of pricing around anymore. I mean, everything has skyrocketed, and this is one of the few affordable plans that residents can actually come into town or the city and afford to move into. So we fully support this project, and I'm not here on behalf of anyone but myself, and no one has paid me to be here today, and I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lou McCarkis, I'm a real estate consultant. My office is at 382 Ocean Avenue down at Ocean Gate. I just want to thank the members of the board for the time, first of all. I'd like you to consider the quality of the development on an individual basis. I know that you've made tough decisions on a lot of projects in this city, but there are a lot of good things happening, and I think it's a result of those tough decisions that you have made. working along with the administration and the Economic Development Director here. Other people have taken notice. I just happen to get Revere gets high fiscal marks in a new bond rating. Well, there are many other communities that are taking notice of the fact that Revere is on the move. They're looking at these projects on an individual basis. In this particular case, I would ask that you give consideration to the Nakashian family. There are a lot of other cities and towns, and I happen to bring them over after doing a couple of projects in Lynn, that would love to have them doing developments in their city. And I think if you just go down Shirley Ave and you take a look at the synagogue that will become 30 units for veterans, it'll show you the kind of quality that they work in the city. I'd urge you to keep the Nakasians in Revere, putting people to work in Revere, and people who are going to buy units and have a vested interest in the city. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Would the ward councilor wish to speak? As one of your constituents, I want to publicly thank you for going out of your way in this project and having them post notices way beyond the Zoning Board of Appeals jurisdiction. So I think you did that entire community, it looked like, down there with making sure that they were aware of this project. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. The original project was 21 bedroom units, okay? And I think the one-bedroom units were positive because that would negate any kids going into the Paul Revere School, which, by the way, is already tremendously overcrowded right now. I would agree that this would be an improvement to the neighborhood, no question about that. I'm happy that we're looking at condos here. And while the parking, it doesn't meet the parking requirements, they do have one space per unit, and they have 2 spaces for visitors, which is probably more than which is more than the original proposal. I would like to see it reduced, some of the 2-bedroom units, to eliminate the possibility of people moving in there with kids. And I love kids, you know, I have no problem with kids. I have many, many grandchildren. But I think when 2 bedrooms, that puts a burden on the city with regard to tax dollars. It's nice to have a new building, it's nice to have new revenues coming into the city, that's great. But when we're talking about additional tax dollars going in to supply school services, that's a problem. And I think it's a serious problem. It's one we should be looking to get away from. So I'm not opposed to the project per se. I would like to see the number of 2-bedroom units reduced, if that would be agreeable to the developer. I would also like to see an agreement signed by the developer on behalf of the condo association and whoever is the legal entity, to agree that they would not apply for a area parking down there, like a special permit is required in that area. I certainly don't want to see people moving in there with cars and then going to Beachland Avenue or Calumet Street and impacting the neighborhood much more than it is right now. So I would, again, the developers here, one of the neighbors is here. I'd like to see if we can get some type of an agreement to reduce the number of 2-bedroom units going in there. And that would cause me to be more favorable to this project. So I'll leave it with that, and I thank you for your indulgence, and those are my comments and my concerns. Thank you.
Are there any opponents? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, I'll close. Are you opposed, sir?
I'm opposed.
Okay. Please step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Alan Campbell, I live at 103 Sagamore Street in Revere. I own 4749 Calumet Street, which is the direct abutter of this building, proposed building. There's no question that something needs to be done with this property. It's in complete disrepair, and I guess you probably get the Board of Health to blame for that. Anyways, I got a letter here from, as far as the parking is concerned, I got this downstairs, and there's 18 spaces on here. And I don't know how you get a car in and out of there with these proposed spaces. So I don't know. It looks good on paper, but in real life, I don't see where that would work. One of my biggest problems is this building's going to be very, very close to my building. It says here that they're supposed to have 20 feet. I'm all for the building, just give me 20 feet. When I was here the last time, I heard that this board is about giving people relief. There's no relief needed here. This is all about profits. The more apartments, the more profits, bottom line. The relief should go to the...
Sir, I want to correct you, because one of the worst thing you just said is they're going to be condominiums, not residential apartments.
I get that.
Okay.
I get that. People are still going to live there.
Right, but they're
And it's about profits.
condominiums, not
Okay,
residential apartments.
I apologize.
They fought to get that
Okay,
taken away.
The word condominium, thank you, I appreciate the interruption. Let me get my train of thought here, if you don't mind. As far as the parking is concerned, there's a building similar to this. I think it's on Beachland Ave, on the corner of Beachland Ave and North Shore Road, 1129 North Shore Road. And in that building, there's 15 mailboxes. So I imagine there's 15 apartments, I don't know, I've never been in there. But on those 15 mailboxes, there's 37 names. Now, I doubt any of those names are going to the Paul Revere School. I imagine they're all adults.
Sir, that's irrelevant to the Board of Appeals. This isn't the city council, though. I don't want that type of stuff said here.
I'm
We're
sorry.
here for the Board of Appeals.
It gets to my point of parking. They have a piece of property down the street where they have 15 parking spaces for that building. For 37 people, they have 15 parking spaces. Where do the rest of those people park? The same thing's going to happen here. Like I said, I'm a direct abutter of this. Obviously, something needs to be done with that property, and I'm not opposed to development. I am opposed to this thing being right up against the side of my house with a dumpster, like on the front of my house, which is in great condition, and I upgrade it every year. I always put money into it. There's going to be a dumpster right beside my front porch. I don't want to sit in my front porch with a dumpster, especially in the middle of the summertime. There's going to be cars lined up, parked right beside my house. Granted, the building won't be right there. It's going to be set back 15 feet, as they said, or that's their proposal. I would like to see 20. In the summertime, when they're starting their cars, the carbon monoxide is going to be going right inside those windows, which I have 2 little kids that live in that first floor apartment. Again, I'm not against development. I think 18 units is too many. Anytime it rains in that neighborhood, the neighborhood is flooded. The last storm that we had, the city was down there pumping water from in front of one neighbor's house into the park on the Ponset Street, flooding the park. It's like, the infrastructure just isn't set for it for all these buildings. And it's like, you're overbuilding the city. Anyways, I'm opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other opposition? Hearing none, I'll close that side. Please step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Noel. Down? Okay. My name is first name Noel, last name Kachai. I'm not going to talk a lot. I want to just say 3 things. We worry about the flood, we worry about the parking, and my house is next to the condo, and we just moved, like what I said last time. It's on December, and we didn't know there is going to be condo. It's not good for my kids, and I'm pregnant, and I can't really talk too much. That's what I'm going to say.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. Does the attorney wish to speak, or everything said? Okay. We're not, Want to take this up right away? We'll.
The next application before the board is application A1815. This is the application of Hasana Residential LLC, 83 Bennington Street, Revere, requesting a 6-month extension of the ZBA variance A1706 to enable the appellant to construct a 5-story, 22-unit residential development within 20 parking space, with 20 parking spaces at 83 Bennington Street.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Carrie Ann Green. I'm an attorney with D'Ambrosio Brown LLP, 14 Proctor Avenue, Revere. I represent Hassania Residential LLC, which is seeking a 6-month extension of the 1-year exercise period for the variances previously granted by this board. My client is incredibly close to finalizing building permits and associated plans, but has experienced unexpected delays with engineers and contractors and making sure everything is in place so that they can construct the best building. Accordingly, out of an abundance of caution, my client is asking for an extension. Happy to answer any questions you have and looking for your approval. Thank you.
But do I have to ask for proponents on? Okay. This is just for a 6-month extension. Are there any proponents? Any opponents? Proponents? Hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. Any opponents? Hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. So we'll continue to the next calendar item number.
The next item before the board is application A1816, the application of Stephen J. Powers, 4 Sewell Street, Revere, requesting a side yard variance to enable the appellant to construct a 24-foot by 12-foot swimming pool on the side yard at the intersection of Low and Sewell Street at 4 Sewell Street, Revere.
Yes. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Name and address for the record, please.
Stephen Powers, Jr., 4 Sewell Street, Revere, Mass.
Okay. Do you wish to add anything? I mean, this speaks for itself with our application, so.
No, the neighborhood seems to be full of the pools. I didn't find a need to take any photographs and bring my neighbors' pools here, but it hasn't seemed to impact. Half of them I didn't even know were there, and I've been there 12 years. So I don't think that I'm going to impact the neighborhood in an adverse manner.
Okay, I'll continue on with the public hearing. Are there any proponents? Anyone in favor? Hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. Any opponents? Hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing, so we vote on this at the end of the meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The next application before the board is application A1817. This is the application of St. Jean Credit Union on behalf of 151 VFW Parkway LLC, requesting a minimum automobile stacking lane length variance for a drive-up banking window to enable the appellant to petition the Revere City Council for a special permit to construct a standalone building to be used as a banking office with a drive-up banking window and a 2,500 square foot retail building to be located at 171 VFW Parkway at Wonderland Marketplace.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Joseph Cottogio, 1 Sprague Street, Revere, representing the applicant. For all intents and purposes, although this is brought officially under the name of the landlord, the applicant is St. Jean's Credit Union, who is the proposed tenant, or the projected tenant into the structure that is to be completed. St. Jean's, as we know, is a presence in Revere. They are excited about the opportunity to expand and grow. We've seen in the past that credit unions are a needed tool to a community's economic stability and growth, and St. Jean's is looking to provide those services to the citizens of Revere. The initial step of this project was actually before this board a couple of months ago. You may recall that there was an application for an overall parking variance that this board heard and approved. Included in that parking variance were the projected parking spaces for this proposed use. Beyond this application, the applicant will also have to file an application with the Revere Conservation Commission, which is being conducted or is presently in that underway. And assuming approval here, the project would then go to the Revere City Council for a special permit for the construction of an independent structure on the same lot. Well, with regard to this application, we are here seeking a variance for the total distance on car stacking for a drive-through. The city ordinance requires 200 square feet. The issue with regard to car stacking for drive-throughs is that the city doesn't make any doesn't differentiate between fast food, restaurant, coffee house, or a bank, all with the same drive-through requirements, but different volumes and historically different needs. We've seen drive-throughs for Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's have very heavy volume, but historically banks drive-throughs do not. The other situation is the city provides for a 200-foot requirement in hopes of avoiding any cars stacking into a public way, backing into the street or being backed up into the street, so they require extended lengths. The particular issue here is that is not a concern. This structure will be entirely enclosed within an immense parking lot. It will not in any way cause cars to be stacked back into any kind of public way or into any kind of traffic. The placement of the pad structure is such that it is removed from any kind of pedestrian traffic for the rest of the retail stores that are already in place. It does not abut in any way any kind of residential area. The abutting distances to any kind of residence are exceedingly large, which is one of the reasons why there isn't a Mylar here, although if the board requires it, I'd be happy to submit it. There are extensive engineering plans that are included in the application. They were also included with the previous application, and they will continue on with reviews by the building inspectors, DPW, Board of Health, and Conservation Commission. The distance that we have along the back is 96 feet. If you were to account for the corner and side of the building, that would exceed 200 feet, although we would never anticipate needing that much for this particular use, although the city ordinances do require that we provide for that variance. So we are seeking approval for the variance tonight. We are here to answer any questions, and if there is any additional information or any additional documents that are needed with the application, we would be happy to provide it upon request. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any proponents? Anyone in favor? Hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. Any opponents? Hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. Any members wish to speak? I just have a question. You did, when we voted on the parking variance for that property.
Yes.
This parcel was included, so that, although I don't know if this was depicted on that, I don't have it in front of me.
I'm sorry, you're correct. It was not depicted, but the use and the proposed use were included in the numbers. And not only were they included for the bank use, but also for the highest possible use of the adjoining retail or commercial space. So that if it were a restaurant, which would require the most parking, those number of spaces have been accounted for in your variance that you granted a couple of months ago.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next calendar item number?
The next application before the board is application A1818. This is the application of Gate Residential Properties LLC, 265 Franklin Street, Boston, requesting a variance of the minimum parking requirements for apartment use, retail use, and restaurant use, and a minimum loading space requirement for restaurant use, and a variance of the minimum screening requirements for an off-street parking area to enable the appellant to construct a 127-unit mixed-use development at 21 Revere Beach Boulevard, Revere. We have a new site plan which has been submitted by the applicant, which the members all have.
Good afternoon. This is not a presentation like you do at the city council meeting, so all of that pretty much is not going to have to be go through. It's not a lengthy.
Okay, great.
Okay?
I can do it pretty quickly.
But I do appreciate you bringing them,
Sure.
but we're just going to stick to the zoning issues.
Perfect.
So good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Tucker, members of the board. My name is Damian Zari. I'm with Gate Residential Properties, 265 Franklin Street, Boston, Massachusetts. I'm here tonight to talk about the requested relief for a project, a 200-unit project that has actually been presented to you as two separate applications, 20 to 50 Ocean Avenue, and then also 21 Revere Beach Boulevard. In summary, as you may see on what's been presented to you and on the boards, the project itself actually consists of 200 units split up in two buildings. The rear building has 73 units. The front building has 127 units. In total, we're providing a 1.21 parking ratio, which is 242 spaces. In addition, we're also building an additional 38 parking spaces on the Ocean Avenue parcel. Those spaces, however, are subject to an easement in favor of Atlantic Towers, which is adjacent to us. We, however, should have beneficial use of those parking spaces for the foreseeable future. So in practicality, we'll have the use of a ratio of 1.4 parking spaces. The current lease, the holder of that easement does not foresee using those spaces until there is potentially a redevelopment of his building, which is not in the plans. But overall, the project's located on the southern section of Revere Beach, which is currently, except for Surfside Lofts and as well as Atlantic Towers, a highly underutilized section of that project, of this area. And one of the things that I wanted to share is that, we believe the project is being designed consistent with the objectives of the RC2 district, but also we're designing the project right now to something that's referred to as the Creative Arts District. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but this is a new zoning district that has not yet been accepted by the city, but we're designing in accordance to that. And basically what it is, it's upside down. Yeah. Yeah. Very creative. And if you're not aware of what the Creative District is, it's basically an area that runs from our property all the way to Shirley Ave, and it's been championed by Councilor McKenna, and it's being created in order to support and really encourage retail, restaurants, housing, art galleries, seasonal open space, as well as public programming. And as part of our development, we're including a 4,000 square foot restaurant, that is actually going to be through blocks, so you'll be able to see it from both Ocean Avenue as well as Revere Beach Boulevard. We're also doing a series of arcade retail, so basically small little kiosks of retail that can be utilized by people either selling art or potentially during the summer months renting longboards, other things that people would be hopefully searching for on the beach that currently it doesn't have. So overall, 200 units, 1.21 parking ratio, an effective 1.4 parking ratio, 4,000 square foot restaurant, and 1,600 square feet of the retail use. And overall, a couple of additional site improvements that may or not be aware of. This is a landscape plan for the project. Currently, we are looking to improve all the sidewalks and pedestrian experience for this project. The sidewalk on Revere Beach Boulevard right now ranges typically in depth from 6 feet to 12 feet. We're going to be improving that to roughly 18 feet consistently throughout. There currently is no sidewalk on West Street. Yeah, there currently is no sidewalk on West Street, which we'll be including, and there's also no sidewalk on Ocean Avenue behind that building, and we'll be putting in an 8-foot sidewalk there as well, to really trying to improve that pedestrian experience. And the goal here is, this is a very important project, we think, for Ward 1 and for the Creative District, but we also think what's going to happen here is going to ultimately help improve the quality of retail and the experience for residents in this area, and also connecting to the Shirley Ave corridor as well, too, which we think is very, very important. And in order to do so, we're asking for a series of relief. A majority of that relief is related to the fact that we are looking for relief setback on the rear parcel, which is the Ocean Ave parcel, in order to be able to accommodate as much parking as possible. We have some very challenging topography here and shape issues. The groundwater is basically at the surface. Like, we are unable to go below grade here. Both projects lie in an AE flood zone, and you actually can see surface water on the Revere Beach Boulevard parcel percolating through. So it's a very challenging situation for us. So we're trying to maximize the setbacks, but at the same time, we've met with all of our abutters, discussed all of these aspects in terms of what we're asking for, and we feel and we're confident that we're designing a building that's going to meet their objectives. One of the main things we're trying to do, and it's actually visualized pretty well on the front page of this, is the Ocean Avenue building is actually a terraced building. So it decreases in size as you move away from the Surfside condominium building in order to provide it with appropriate relief. So that's been presented twice to that building. We've also met with our future abutter to the right of that building, which is Greg Antonelli. We've discussed the building with him, and I believe he supports that building. And I think overall, we're just trying to really present something that's going to work with the abutters and at the same time be an effective project and feasible project, because we are dealing with some pretty serious site conditions that are pretty challenging in order to present. Some of the other things as it relates to the variances we're seeking, we are looking for a variance on retail parking for all those uses. We believe that the restaurant that's going to be there and the retail space that's going to be there is going to serve people who are already coming to Revere Beach or who are already at Revere Beach. So the residents of this neighborhood who have no dining opportunities are going to have a dining opportunity. The people who are on the beach who need services are going to get those services through that small retail. So we're looking for a variance on that retail space. We will be implementing, and I'm sure the user of the restaurant will be implementing, a valet system in order to help with that parking in the event that that is necessary, but that's one of the relief we're seeking. And then the last thing that we're looking for really is, it's very difficult to see on this plan, but on the north side of Atlantic Towers, there currently exists a very dilapidated boardwalk. It's currently completely fenced off and not utilized. It sits on our property here. One of our main planning goals for this project was to make sure that the building on Ocean Avenue felt like it had presence on the beach. So we actually want to rebuild that boardwalk and actually create a nice experience for the people coming from that building to the beach. And one of the things that we're seeking is, current zoning requires a 6-foot landscape buffer between any parking areas and a residential building. What we're proposing is a 5-foot pathway with a fence for screening. We've reviewed that with the abutter, and the abutter supports that, and we think it's a strong planning position for us to do as well, too. So that's kind of a quick summary of the project. I do have members of the design team here, as well as our legal team, to answer any questions that I may not be able to answer, but in summary, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, seeing that this is a public hearing, are there any proponents?
Mr. Chairman, zoning board members, Bill Ranny, 16 Pleasant Street, Surgery 21 Northeast. Fantastic. I don't know what else to say. I mean, my dad grew up literally on the other side of that circle, and that area in my whole life growing up, I'm now 51, has been, for lack of a better term, in rough shape. And an archetype, project like that, I fully support 100%. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joanne McKenna, Ward 1 Councilor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm an opponent and a proponent, so I have a couple of mixed issues. I did speak with the developer, and they did agree on the deed restriction that the two buildings, if the parking is going to go, a lot of the parking is going to go in the back of Revere Beach on Ocean Ave. And I was concerned, could they sell one building and not the other? And that would restrict the parking if they did sell one building and not the other. They agreed to a deed restriction that both buildings have to be sold together. So that would help the restrictions of the parking. The second thing was that they're extending the parking 34 spaces at the Atlantic Towers, which was agreed upon between both owners. But my only concern is, and I've talked to a couple of residents at the Surfside Loft, and they've spent a lot of money to live there and have the view that they have, and the front building will block their view. So I know there's a 40-foot space between the Atlantic Towers and this new building that's going up, but they do have concerns, and I don't know how we can help them with their concerns, because they bought there for the views of the beach, and now this is going to be blocked. But I feel strongly about this building, this development, because I think anything on Revere Beach should be developed. I think that beach should be, it's long overdue. It's been 25 years. We have parcels of land that haven't been built on, bad buildings, buildings that are falling down, and anything that's going to bring revenue to the city on Revere Beach and bring people to come to Revere Beach, I'm in favor of. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Zoning Board, my name is Robert O'Brien. I'm a Director of Economic Development for the City of Boston. I live at 10 Ocean Avenue.
Can you correct yourself, sir? City of Revere?
Oh, my Lord.
I know, because you used
getting old.
You
I'm
used
sorry.
to say that so
I know.
often, so it's still in the back of your mind.
In any event,
And
to
that's on
clarify,
tape,
I
so I'm
live-
going to put that on bloopers.
I live in the, yeah, it wouldn't be the first time, I can guarantee you. I do live in Revere. I live at 10 Ocean Avenue, and that is actually relevant to this because 10 Ocean Avenue is Surfside Lofts. In effect, I live next to one of the parcels being proposed for development, and my wife and I own a condominium in that building. I would say, however, that I am appearing here completely in my official capacity, not in any sense representing Surfside Lofts. But with that disclaimer, and in the interest of full disclosure, I would reinforce observations previously made about the context of this development. The parcels that we're talking about, which are among the most attractive waterfront parcels, arguably in the Northeast, have been vacant literally for decades. And it is, as Joanne pointed out, our ward councilor, very timely that these now be developed for the residential purposes for which they are zoned. And I think in addition to that, the city, the councilor, and I would say the community at large is particularly interested not only in the residential development, but in the retail and restaurant amenities that will be brought as part of this project. Indeed, the restaurant and retail amenities were added essentially at the explicit request of the councilor, the mayor, and the community. And we value that sort of use and whatever variance is required to allow that to happen. The development of these two parcels, the parcel at 90 Ocean Avenue, the hotel and possibly second hotel on Revere Beach Boulevard, is at long last going to animate and activate what has essentially been a desolate and isolated portion of the Revere Beach waterfront, certainly since the amusements and so forth have gone the way of history. So for us, it's important, it's timely, this is a very worthy project. I would also note, although it's not a matter for concern to the Zoning Board of Appeal, that we have great confidence in this developer. The developer has had a lot of experience in communities surrounding Boston, including Chelsea and Quincy, but even more to the point, this will be the third project of Gate Residential in Revere. Their combined investment in our community exceeds $270 million with this project included. From the point of view of the Economic Development Director of Revere, not Boston, that kind of investment in the community is extremely valued, very timely, and in addition to that, it says to us that what this developer proposes, this developer will be able to do. And their experience, their expertise, and their outreach in their previous Revere experience has also led them to be very forthcoming with all of the abutters and all of the neighbors to this project, with the mayor, with the economic development director and others in planning this project. So they have been very proactive and also very responsive. From our perspective, although this is a development project on two different parcels, it really is one development project as far as we're concerned, because not only could it not be, one parcel could not be developed without the other, the variances that are required for one parcel allow for the development of the other. So the concept of a deed restriction, which insists on the connection between these two parcels, is a very timely one and one we would very much support. With regard to the variances in particular, the setback variances only apply to the Ocean Avenue parcel. And the setback issues really apply with regard to the perimeter of the parcel adjacent to Surfside Lofts. There is an easement for a shared access entryway point, which has been discussed with the trustees and residents of Surfside Lofts. So that will be designed and developed in a complementary way, which will greatly improve the appearance of the situation over the vacant lots and the vacant Chinese restaurant. So the setback is one, to the best of my knowledge, has been fully agreed to and will be formalized in a butter agreement with Surfside Lofts that has yet to be concluded but has been largely discussed and arrived at in concept. The parking has already been addressed. The variance that is being requested is to allow 1.2 parking units, a ratio of 1.2 parking spaces per unit, but with the addition of the 38 spaces, the practical effect will be 1.4, which is in the range that is being proposed and approved by the zoning board with the support of the city in other waterfront parcels, especially in TOD parcels like these with accessibility to transit. So we think it is reasonable and we think it is warranted by the project that it will develop. Having said that, as with all projects where parking variances are required and approved, we would recommend in this instance, as in others, that it be subject to certain conditions. Those conditions are outlined in our letter. They have previously been approved for other projects by the Zoning Board of Appeal, but they include, among other things, that the cost of parking be included in the lease so that we avoid the kind of problem that occurred with Vanguard at the other end of Ocean Avenue. There are others, car sharing, transportation management, et cetera, which we think should be part of any approval, have been part of similar approvals in the past. And with those conditions, we very much support your approval of these variances, and I think I speak confidently on behalf of the mayor as well. So we urge your prompt and positive action so that this project can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents?
Hi, I'm Laura Libby, 10 Ocean Ave. I was asked to come up here. My name is Laura Libby, and I live at 10 Ocean Ave, which is Surfside Lofts. The trustees of Surfside Lofts have asked me to just make a statement with regard to the letter that Bob provided you, which happens to mention that the trustees are completely in favor. And we wanted to come up with a letter and haven't come with a final agreement with Gate. So we wanted to clarify that that wasn't completely solidified. So it's not for or against, it's just a clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have two letters which the members have in support of this, from Gene Graff and
Your mic.
John Burrell. We have two letters that all board members received in support of this from Gene Graff and John Perella Jr.
Are there any other proponents? Hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. Are there any opponents? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. Any members wish to speak? All I have to say is that I'm happy that the boardwalk is going to be back there, and that I was concerned about the screening, but Atlantic Towers agreed upon a fencing. Okay, those are my two questions, and then of course implementing a deed restriction that we would be putting on or asking our city solicitor to draft the deed restriction for the two parcels.
Is that going on D and E?
Could you clarify what the deed restriction would be based on, that these parcels could not be sold without a deed restriction being on there for the parking? However, could you define the parcels of land for us, if you
Sure.
don't mind?
So the parcels of land are, the parcel on Ocean Avenue is referred to as 20 to 50 Ocean Avenue. It's noted in the application. It's a .73 acre parcel. I don't have the parcel ID number in my mind, but it's in the application. The other parcel is currently referred to as 21 Revere Beach Boulevard. It's a .83 acre parcel. It technically has no address. It's referred to as parcels 3, 4, 5 Revere Beach Boulevard. We were seeking address designation through the city, but it does have its own parcel ID number that is in the application.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So some of the parking for 21 is in 250?
Yeah, the parking shared between both buildings.
And the issue of the easement parking, how does one deal with that?
So the easement, we're asking to exclude the easement spaces, and that's why we're seeking relief for parking on the 20 to 50 Ocean Avenue parcel. But we were just informing the board that from a practical matter, if there was a concern about lack of parking, we see the foreseeable use of an additional 38 spaces that would be located on the 20 to 50 Ocean Avenue parcel within the garage.
So if Atlantic Towers wants to exercise the easement, you lose 38 spaces?
Yes, and so we would take our parking ratio from a practical 1.4 to the 1.21, which is what we're seeking a variance for.
Bring that to the city. Plus the other conditions indicated involved.
Right, the lease restrictions, the parking be included in the lease. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I think that's a great question. We actually have had a preliminary meeting with DCR, who controls that road. They also happen to control Revere Beach Boulevard as well, too. So what we're planning on doing, in order to get the most beneficial use of that boardwalk, we are going to be asking for additional crossing. We don't know what the requirements are yet, but it's going to be part of our entitlement process. We will be making sure that there's safe passage across that street, because right now, it's like, it acts like a highway.
Bob, could you just come up on that? Because these are DCR roadways. We have no...
Yes. I would note, relevant to that point, the city is now engaged in a waterfront district traffic study in a collaborative arrangement that includes DCR as well as DOT. And we expect to have some results from that within the next few months. But part of that will be a curb management plan that will propose crosswalks, loading zones, pickup, drop-off, short-term parking, long-term parking, and various other things that will address the situation not only with regard to this parcel, but with regard to the entire length of the boulevard and Ocean Avenue.
Is there a way to get an overhead crosswalk there, crossing there? Because you've got a lot of buildings in that area now.
Yeah, I cross that street several times a day. My guess is there would be resistance to a pedestrian bridge for visual and other reasons, but I do think that with proper crosswalks, signalization, perhaps some other improvements, that pedestrian safety can pretty well be guaranteed. Right now, all of the crosswalks on both the boulevard and Ocean Avenue are largely not signal controlled because there are no signals on the boulevard at all. But we're working all of that into the study. So it's very much a concern here. We'd also like to improve the sort of appearance, streetscape function of Ocean Avenue, which down there and really for most of Ocean Avenue functions like a highway rather than any kind of a city street. It was allowed in our area because there were just a few buildings. When that entire area is populated, we need to bring that, especially in off-peak commuting periods, back into the community, as it were.
The applicant has submitted suggested amendments to their application also, which I'll hand out.
Here, so I'll just end, are any other proponents? Opponents? Hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing.
The next application before the board is application A 1819, Gate Residential Properties LLC, 265 Franklin Street, Boston, requesting variances of the minimum rear side and front yard setbacks and parking requirements to enable the appellant to construct a 73-unit multifamily residential development at 20-50 Ocean Avenue, Revere.
Okay, so a lot of the presentation took place already.
All of it did, yes.
Yes, okay.
Name and address of the record.
Could you just state your name and address?
Damian
for the record?
Zari, Gate Residential Properties, 265 Franklin Street, Boston.
Okay. Most, our questions have been answered as far as I'm concerned. Do you wish to speak, Bob, on this? I don't think you have to.
I'd be recorded as a proponent of this. As I said in my presentation, we consider this one development on two parcels, so my comments were
Okay.
reflective of both.
Seeing that it's a public hearing, I'll ask if there's any proponents, anyone in favor? And we have the letters on file from the 1818, which will be incorporated in 1819. Are there any opponents? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, I'll close that side of the hearing. Any members wish to speak on this? Okay, so now we can go back to our regular order of business and roll calls.
Just let me get adjusted here for a second.
Yes, well, they would relate the two.
Do we want to restrict that that the city will not provide, that there'd be a restriction, that there'd be no permanent parking issues? First application before the board is application A 1816 of North Shore Condos LLC to construct 18 condominium units, or 18 residential condominium units at 1133 North Shore Road, bounded by Beachland Avenue and Calumet Street. There has been discussion of condition that the city of Revere shall not issue any parking permits, resident parking permits to any occupants of the building at 1133 North Shore Road. Any further conditions being? Hearing none. The question now comes on granting the relief requested by the appellant, Mr. Bacilli. Yes. Yes, Mr. D'Angelo. Yes. Mr. Lopes? Yes. Mr. Mazzoni? Yes. Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
This is granted, subject to the conditions. The next application before the board is application A1815, Hazana Residential requesting a 6-month extension of their previous variance A1706. Question now comes on granting the 6-month extension. Mr. Bacilli? Yes. Mr. D'Angelo? Yes. Mr. Lopes? Yes. Mr. Mazzoni? Yes. Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Yes, this is granted for the 6-month extension. The next application before the board is application A1816, the application of Stephen Powers, 4 Sewell Street, Revere, requesting a side yard variance to enable the appellant to construct a 24-foot by 12-foot swimming pool on the side yard at the intersection of Low and Sewell Streets at 4 Sewell Street, Revere. Question comes on granting the relief requested. Mr. Bacilli? Yes. Mr. D'Angelo? Yes. Mr. Lopes? Yes. Mr. Mazzoni? Yes. Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Yes, this is granted. The next application before the board is application A1817, St. Jean Credit Union on behalf of 151 VFW Parkway LLC, requesting a minimum automobile stacking lane length variance for a drive-up banking window to enable the appellant to petition the Revere City Council for a special permit to construct a standalone building to be used as a banking office with drive-up banking window and a 2,500 square foot retail building to be located at 171 VFW Parkway at Wonderland Marketplace. Question comes on granting the relief requested. Mr. Bacilli? Yes. Mr. D'Angelo? Yes. Mr. Lopes? Yes. Mr. Mazzoni? Yes. Mr. Tucker? Yes, this is granted. The next application before the board is application A1818 of Gate Residential Properties LLC, requesting variances of the minimum parking requirements for apartment use, retail use, and restaurant use, and a minimum loading space requirements for restaurant use, and a variance for minimum screening requirements for an off-street parking area to enable the appellant to construct a 127-unit mixed-use development at 21 Revere Beach Boulevard, Revere. The board has accepted recommendations to include conditions that a cost of on-site residential parking will be included in the lease of the various units. Parking will be limited by lease to parking spaces approved for this project. A bicycle option, the project will provide a bicycle parking in each garage at no additional charge to residents, and it will provide convenient access to approved bike sharing programs. A card sharing option, the project will provide at one spaces in each garage for Zipcar or other car sharing programs for use by tenants who do not have or would not otherwise need a personal car. 5, a transportation management plan will be developed. The purpose of the transportation management plan will be to encourage residents with use of public transportation and other alternatives to private vehicle ownership and use. Such a plan will be filed with the City of Revere Building Department as a condition of the issuance of the occupancy permit. Also, the variance will be subject to a deed restriction to be prepared by the city solicitor in connection between the two buildings of a shared parking deed restriction. Is there any other verbiage you want to use for that? Parcels. I heard mentioned from Councilor McKenna that that the buildings could not be sold separately or something to that effect?
As far as the deed restriction, that would be the city solicitor drafting that, yes.
That would be acceptable to the city. I believe that's acceptable.
It is.
Question comes now on granting the relief requested subject to the various conditions that have been mentioned. Mr. Bacilli? Yes. Mr. D'Angelo? Yes. Mr. Lopes? Yes. Mr. Mazzoni? Yes. Mr. Tucker? Yes, this is granted subject to the conditions. I'm doing it now. I have, we didn't do Chara yet.
Other business.
No, we're still doing, I know there's another item.
Oh, all right.
I just want to get these. The next item before the board is application A1819, Gate Residential Properties LLC, requesting variances of the minimum rear, side, and front yard setbacks and parking requirements to enable the appellant to construct a 73-unit multifamily residential development at 20-50 Ocean Avenue.
With the same
Same conditions.
conditions as
As
A1818.
18. Question now comes on, one moment. Question now comes on granting the relief requested by the appellant. Mr. Bacilli? Yes. Mr. D'Angelo? Yes. Mr. Lopes? Yes. Mr. Mazzoni? Yes. Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
This is granted, subject to the same conditions as application A1818. One moment. That's the,
Before we go on to
Right.
that's the other issue.
yeah.
It's not often that I commend anyone for the effort that they put in, but I feel that I have to speak on the Gate Residential property, because this is a perfect example of the developer working with the abutters, with the community development. I know this parcel, it took a long time, but I really am strongly, that's why I voted on it, is to, the effort that was put into this to try to accommodate everyone was exceptional. I know there's still work to be done on some of the issues, but as far as the side yards, the setbacks and back, I commend both the developer and community development. This is what should take place on all of the properties that we're dealing with. Thank you.
There's one final matter before the board that did not appear on the agenda, and it's Councilor Corey Rhodes is here to speak on it.
Thank you, board members. This is a housekeeping matter from a project that was approved in January. You might remember a project on North Shore Road at Dehan Street, a small building, 8 units being built. Ira Novoselsky came out in support of that. In the decision itself, my own failure to mention in the written portion of the decision that there is an easement area that the building crosses over North Shore into the Dehan parcel. It is clearly referenced on the plan that was approved by this board, but in the decision itself, it's not as clear, and the lender for this project has asked that we try to address that. Mr. Henry had a very good idea in working with him on doing a scrivener's affidavit to add some very minor language to the decision that says that there will references this 1,600-foot easement area, just to say that the building will be on that. So this is really just a housekeeping matter, and wanted to bring it in front of you just to make you aware of it and ask for your support.
So this is all discussed during the public hearing issue, so we're just more or less doing a clarification?
It's a further clarification of a very
Okay. Does that require a roll call?
Question comes on authorizing the issuance of a Scrivener's affidavit to clarify the easement on the plan. Mr. Bacilli? Yes. Mr. D'Angelo? Yes. Mr. Lopes? Yes. Mr. Mazzoni? Yes. Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Yes. It is
Thank you very
approved.
much.
Having no further business, our next meeting would be May 23rd at 4 PM. Thank you.